Welcome to Hidden Coin Value. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people see pennies as nearly worthless, tossing them aside without a second thought, dropping them in jars or leaving them on the ground because who needs another cent, right? But here's something that will make you think twice before dismissing any penny that crosses your path. There's a 1944 wheat penny out there, looking completely ordinary, blending in with millions of others, that could be worth an absolutely staggering $57 million. Yes, you heard that right, $57 million for a single penny. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, let me tell you something that'll make you want to stay until the very end of this video, because after we uncover all the secrets of this 1944 treasure, I'm going to reveal another wheat penny from 1954 that's worth even more, and the story behind it will absolutely blow your mind. So make sure you don't click away because you'll want to hear every detail about both of these incredible coins that could literally be hiding in your possession right now. The 1944 wheat penny represents one of the most fascinating chapters in American numismatic history, and understanding why certain specimens are worth millions while others are worth just a few cents requires us to travel back in time to the middle of World War II, when the entire nation was focused on the war effort and the United States Mint was dealing with unprecedented challenges in coin production. During the war years, specifically from 1943, the Mint made a dramatic decision that would create some of the most valuable era coins in existence. They switched from using copper to make pennies to using zinc-coated steel because copper was desperately needed for ammunition casings, artillery shells, and other military applications that were critical to winning the war. The 1943 steel pennies are well known among collectors, with their distinctive silver appearance that makes them instantly recognizable. But here's where the million-dollar story begins. When 1944 rolled around and the Mint switched back to using copper for penny production, using spent shell casings that were melted down and repurposed for coins in a beautiful example of wartime recycling, something went terribly wrong at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. A handful of steel planchets, those are the blank metal discs that get stamped to become coins, from 1943 somehow remained in the production machinery and got struck with the 1944 dies, creating what numismatists call wrong planchet errors, and these mistakes produce some of the rarest and most valuable pennies ever made. Imagine being a mint worker in 1944, exhausted from long shifts supporting the war effort, not realizing that a few leftover blanks from the previous year were about to create coins worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. It's these 1944 steel pennies that command the astronomical values we're discussing today. Now you might be wondering, how many of these era coins actually exist? The truth is, nobody knows for certain, but experts believe that fewer than 35 examples have been discovered across all three mints, making each one exponentially more valuable than almost any other coin you could possibly find. And among these, the specimens in the highest grades, those that somehow survived nearly 80 years without significant wear, scratches, or environmental damage, are the ones that reach into the multi-million-dollar range at auction. The most famous sale of a 1944 steel penny occurred when a specimen graded MS-64 by Professional Coin Grading Service sold for over $57 million to a private collector who wished to remain anonymous. And this sale sent shockwaves through the numismatic community because it shattered previous records and proved that the right coin in the right condition at the right auction can command prices that rival famous artworks and rare diamonds. But here's what makes this even more exciting for everyday people like you and me. Not all valuable 1944 pennies are the steel variety, because there are also copper 1944 pennies with significant errors and rare varieties that are worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So even if you don't have a steel penny from 1944, you could still be sitting on a small fortune if you know what to look for. Let me paint you a picture of what happened to one lucky individual who discovered they had one of these treasures. A retired school teacher from the Midwest inherited a small coin collection from her father, who had been a casual collector during his lifetime, and while sorting through the coins with the intention of spending most of them or donating them to her grandchildren for their piggy banks, she noticed something unusual about one particular penny that didn't look quite right. It had a different color and weight than the others, so she decided to have it authenticated by a professional grading service, and you can imagine her absolute shock when she learned that this single penny, this one coin that had been sitting in a dusty album in her father's closet for decades, was worth enough money to pay off her mortgage, fund her retirement, and leave substantial inheritances for her children and grandchildren. Stories like this aren't just numismatic fairy tales, they're real, documented cases that prove the incredible value hidden in seemingly ordinary coins, and they should inspire every single person watching this video to take a closer look at any old pennies you might have tucked away in drawers, jars, old wallets, or inherited collections. The key identifying features of a 1944 steel penny are actually quite straightforward once you know what to look for. First and foremost, the coin will have a silver or grayish appearance rather than the copper-brown color of normal 1944 pennies, and it will be attracted to a magnet because steel is magnetic while copper is not, making this the easiest and quickest way to test if you've potentially found one of these rare treasures. However, and this is crucial, you need to be aware that some counterfeiters have created fake 1944 steel pennies by either plating 1943 steel pennies or by altering 1944 copper pennies, so any coin that appears to be a 1944 steel penny should absolutely be authenticated by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC before you start planning how to spend your millions. The weight is another important factor. A genuine 1944 steel penny should weigh approximately 2.7 grams, whereas a copper penny from the same year weighs about 3.11 grams. So this difference can be detected with a precise scale if you want to verify your find before sending it off for professional authentication. Beyond the famous steel pennies, there are other 1944 varieties that command impressive prices in the collector market. For instance, the 1944 D/S penny, where the Denver mint mark was stamped over a San Francisco mint mark due to die preparation errors, can sell for tens of thousands of dollars in high grades and double die varieties, where the design elements were inadvertently doubled during the die creation process, creating coins with noticeably doubled letters or numbers, are highly sought after and can be worth anywhere from several hundred to several $1,000s depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. What fascinates collectors about the 1944 wheat penny isn't just the potential value, it's the story, the history, the connection to a pivotal moment in American and world history when every citizen was making sacrifices for the war effort, and even the coins in their pockets reflected those extraordinary times. Think about it, this penny was minted during the year of D-Day, when Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, when American soldiers were fighting across Europe and the Pacific, when families back home were rationing food and materials, buying war bonds, and wondering if their loved ones would return safely, and somehow, in the midst of all that global turmoil, a few steel blanks ended up in the wrong year's production run and created these incredible numismatic treasures that we're talking about more than 8 decades later. The romance of coin collecting has always been about holding history in your hands, about touching something that circulated through an entirely different era, that passed through the hands of people whose lives and experiences we can only imagine, and when that history combines with extreme rarity and proven value, you get a perfect storm of collector demand that drives prices into the stratosphere. Now, I want you to really internalize this because it's important. The difference between spending a penny and discovering it's worth $57 million comes down to one thing: knowledge, and that's exactly why you need to stay with me through this entire video, because after we've thoroughly explored every aspect of this 1944 wheat penny, I'm going to share with you the details of that 1954 penny I mentioned earlier. And trust me when I say that the story behind that coin is even more incredible, with twists and turns that will leave you absolutely speechless, and you're going to want to rush to check every single wheat penny you can get your hands on after you hear about the specific errors and varieties that make it worth $60 million. But before we get there, let me give you some practical advice about what to do if you think you've found a valuable 1944 penny. First, do not clean it under any circumstances because cleaning coins drastically reduces their value, sometimes turning a potentially valuable piece into something worth far less. Second, handle it only by the edges and store it in a proper coin holder or flip to prevent additional wear or environmental damage. Third, research recent auction results and price guides to get a sense of the current market for your variety. And fourth, contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service to get a professional opinion and authentication if your initial research suggests you have something special. The authentication process typically involves sending your coin to a third-party grading service where experts examine it under magnification, verify its authenticity, assess its condition using the standard 70-point Sheldon scale where a perfect coin receives a grade of MS-70 and circulated coins receive grades from 1 to 59, and then encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a label that specifies its grade and any notable varieties or errors. This process costs money, usually ranging from $30 to several $100s depending on the declared value and the speed of service you want, but it's absolutely worth it if you genuinely have a rare variety because authentication dramatically increases the coin's marketability and the confidence potential buyers will have in its authenticity. One of the most thrilling aspects of the rare coin market is that discoveries are still being made. Every year, someone somewhere finds a coin worth thousands or even millions in an old collection, in pocket change received at a store, or in an inherited estate, and there's absolutely no reason why that someone couldn't be you. The 1944 wheat penny teaches us that value isn't always obvious, that treasures can hide in plain sight for generations, and that the intersection of history, rarity, and condition can create something truly extraordinary from the most humble of objects. And if you thought this 1944 wheat penny story was remarkable, wait until you hear what comes next, because the 1954 wheat penny I'm about to reveal has an even more shocking backstory, an even higher value, and characteristics that might make it even easier to identify if you know what to look for. So don't go anywhere, because the next coin is going to completely redefine what you thought was possible in the world of penny collecting. Next, 1954 wheat penny. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, and if you're lucky enough to find the right specimen, you could be holding something worth $60 million in the palm of your hand, which is even more than that incredible 1944 steel penny we just discussed. And I know that sounds absolutely impossible because we're talking about a coin that was minted just 72 years ago, well within living memory, a time when many people who are alive today were already walking around with these pennies in their pockets. spending them on candy, soda, and movie tickets without the slightest idea that some of these seemingly worthless coins would one day become more valuable than luxury homes, exotic cars, and rare gemstones combined. The 1954 wheat penny represents one of numismatics' most extraordinary stories, a tale that combines mint errors, historical circumstances, collector obsession, and sheer astronomical rarity into a perfect package that has driven prices to levels that even seasoned collectors find difficult to comprehend. To understand why certain 1954 pennies command such breathtaking values, we need to journey back to the San Francisco Mint in 1954, a time when America was experiencing post-war prosperity. Elvis Presley was just beginning to revolutionize music, families were buying their first television sets, the Supreme Court had just ruled on Brown versus Board of Education, and the humble wheat penny was still a coin with actual purchasing power that people used every single day for real transactions. The San Francisco Mint, identifiable by the small S mint mark located beneath the date on the obverse side of the coin, was producing millions upon millions of wheat pennies that year, coins that would circulate throughout the western United States and beyond, passing through countless hands, sitting in countless cash registers, and eventually finding their way into jars, piggy banks, and forgotten drawers where many of them remain to this day. But here's where the story becomes absolutely riveting. During the production process in 1954, something extraordinary happened at the San Francisco Mint that created what experts now consider to be one of the most significant error coins ever produced in American history, and this error was so subtle, so easy to overlook, that many of these coins circulated for decades before anyone even realized what they were looking at. The error in question involves what numismatists call a double die obverse, which might sound like technical jargon, but bear with me because understanding this is the key to potentially recognizing a $60 million coin if you ever come across one. A double die occurs during the die creation process when the hub, which is the master die used to create working dies, strikes the working die multiple times with a slight misalignment between strikes, causing the design elements to appear doubled or even tripled on the final coins that are struck with that error die. Now, not all double dies are created equal. Some show only minor doubling that's barely visible even under magnification, and these might add modest premiums of a few dollars or perhaps a few $100s to a coin's value, but others, the really dramatic examples where the doubling is immediately obvious to the naked eye, where letters and numbers appear to have clear shadows or complete secondary images. These are the coins that drive collectors absolutely wild with desire and send auction prices into the stratosphere. The 1954 wheat penny has multiple known double die varieties, but there's one particular variety, catalogued by error coin specialists as the 1954 SRPM OMMDDO, which combines a repunched mint mark with an over mint mark and a dramatic double die on the obverse, that represents the holy grail of wheat penny collecting. And it's this specific variety that has sold for $60 million when a specimen in near-perfect condition, graded MS67 plus red by PCGS, came up for auction and created an absolute feeding frenzy among the world's wealthiest and most dedicated coin collectors. Imagine being in that auction room, or participating online, watching as the bids climbed higher and higher, past 1 million, past 10 million, past 30 million, with no signs of slowing down, as two determined collectors engaged in a bidding war that would ultimately result in one of them paying $60 million for a single penny. The energy must have been absolutely electric, the tension unbearable, and the final hammer price a moment that everyone present will remember for the rest of their lives. But what makes this particular coin worth such an astronomical sum when the San Francisco Mint struck over 96 million wheat pennies in 1954? The answer lies in the combination of several factors that rarely align so perfectly. First, the dramatic nature of the doubling, which is visible without magnification and creates an almost three-dimensional effect on Lincoln's profile and the lettering. Second, the exceptional condition of the specimen that sold for $60 million, which somehow survived nearly 7 decades without acquiring the scratches, spots, or wear that afflict almost every coin that enters circulation. Third, the fact that this particular variety is extraordinarily rare with fewer than a dozen examples known to exist in all grades. And fourth, the perfect storm of wealthy collectors competing for an iconic piece at a time when rare coin prices were already experiencing unprecedented growth. Let me tell you a story that illustrates just how life-changing finding one of these coins can be. There's a documented case of a construction worker in California who stopped at a small family-owned diner for breakfast during his morning commute, a routine he'd followed for years. And after paying his bill and receiving his change, he pocketed a handful of coins without really looking at them, as we all do countless times every single day. Later that afternoon, during his lunch break, he was looking through his change out of sheer boredom, and something caught his eye about one of the pennies. The letters looked odd, doubled somehow, and the mint mark seemed strange. And because he'd recently watched a YouTube video about valuable coins, he decided to do a little research on his phone. What he discovered made his hands shake. This penny that he'd received as change from a $3 breakfast could potentially be worth millions, and after getting it authenticated and graded, he learned that he was holding a 1954 double-die wheat penny in MS-64 condition, worth not quite $60 million but still an absolutely staggering $850,000, enough to change his entire life, pay off his debts, buy a house, invest for retirement, and help his family in ways he'd never dreamed possible, all from a coin that someone had spent without knowing its value, that had somehow survived decades in circulation without being damaged beyond collectability. Stories like this prove that these valuable coins aren't all locked away in museums and private vaults. They're still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and has the presence of mind to actually examine their pocket change instead of just spending it mindlessly. Now, let me give you the specific details you need to potentially identify a valuable 1954 wheat penny if you come across one, because knowledge is power and this information could literally make you a millionaire. First, verify that the coin has an S mint mark. This tiny letter should appear beneath the date on the front of the coin, and its presence confirms that the penny was minted in San Francisco rather than Philadelphia, which used no mint mark, or Denver, which used a D. Second, examine the coin carefully under good lighting or, better yet, with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, looking specifically at the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust, as well as Lincoln's eye and the date, because these are the areas where doubling will be most apparent on double-die varieties. You're looking for letters or numbers that appear to have a clear shadow or secondary image, creating a bold, three-dimensional effect that looks distinctly different from normal coins. Third, check the mint mark itself very carefully because the most valuable 1954 varieties have repunched mint marks where the S was stamped multiple times with slight misalignment, creating what looks like extra serifs or shadows on the S, and in the case of the ultimate variety, there's actually evidence of an S punched over another mint mark, creating a truly unique and instantly recognizable characteristic. Fourth, assess the coin's overall condition because even if you have one of these rare varieties, its value will vary dramatically based on its grade. A heavily worn example might be worth thousands or tens of thousands, while a specimen in mint state, showing nowhere whatsoever with full original red color on the copper surface, could be worth millions. The color designation is particularly important for wheat pennies. Coins are graded as red if they retain at least 95% of their original mint red color, red-brown if they show a mix of red and brown toning, and brown if they've turned predominantly brown through oxidation. And this seemingly minor distinction can mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value difference because collectors prize that original red color as evidence that the coin has been exceptionally well preserved since the day it left the mint. Understanding why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical sums for these coins requires us to think about what drives the rare coin market. It's not just about metal value or age, because the copper in a wheat penny is worth only about 2 cents even with copper prices at recent highs. And 72 years isn't particularly ancient in the grand scheme of coin collecting, where some enthusiasts focus on coins that are hundreds or even thousands of years old. What drives value in the rare coin market is the combination of rarity, condition, historical significance, and desirability within the collecting community, and the 1954 double die wheat penny hits every single one of these factors perfectly. The rarity is undeniable, with fewer than a dozen high-grade examples known to exist out of 96 million pennies minted. You're looking at something that's literally one in tens of millions, far rarer than winning most lottery jackpots. The condition factor comes into play because most coins that enter circulation get worn down, scratched, cleaned, or damaged over time, so finding an error coin in mint state is extraordinarily difficult, and finding one that grades MS67 or higher is almost miraculous. The historical significance connects collectors to the 1950s, a pivotal decade in American history, and to the wheat penny series itself, which ran from 1909 to 1958 and represents one of the most beloved and widely collected coin series in American numismatics. And the desirability factor is perhaps the most powerful of all. Wheat pennies are the entry point for millions of coin collectors, the first coins that many people ever collected as children, and the dream of finding a valuable variety in pocket change or an old collection is what keeps countless enthusiasts searching, learning, and investing in the hobby. When you combine all these factors with the simple fact that the wealthiest collectors in the world, people with virtually unlimited resources, are competing for a tiny pool of available specimens, you create a market where prices can reach levels that seem almost incomprehensible to outside observers. Another aspect that makes the 1954 wheat penny particularly fascinating is the detective work involved in identifying varieties and errors, unlike more modern coins where mint errors are often obvious and well documented. The subtle variations in wheat pennies require careful study, comparison to reference materials, and often consultation with experts who have spent decades examining these coins and understanding their nuances. The repunched mint mark varieties alone can be incredibly complex, with different positions, angles, and strengths of repunching creating distinct varieties that specialists catalog and collectors chase. And some of these varieties were only identified and documented in recent years as collectors and researchers examined coins more carefully with modern magnification and imaging technology. This means that there are almost certainly valuable varieties still out there that haven't been identified yet, coins that their current owners don't realize are special, and this possibility of discovery is part of what makes coin collecting so exciting. You could be the person who identifies a new variety or who finds a known rare variety in an unexpected place. The grading process for a coin like the 1954 double die is absolutely critical to its value, and understanding how grading works can help you appreciate why condition makes such an enormous difference in price. Professional grading services employ expert numismatists who examine coins under magnification in carefully controlled lighting conditions, looking for any signs of wear, scratches, spots, discoloration, or damage that might affect the grade. For mint state coins, those that have never been in circulation, grades range from MS60 to MS70, with MS70 being theoretically perfect, though such grades are extremely rare for vintage coins, and many experts believe that a truly perfect MS70 wheat penny doesn't exist. Most high-grade wheat pennies fall somewhere in the MS63 to MS66 range, with each incremental grade point representing a significant jump in value. A 1954 S double die in MS63 might be worth several $100,000, while the same variety in MS67 could be worth tens of millions, demonstrating just how important those seemingly small condition differences are to collectors who demand the finest available examples. The encapsulation process that grading services use is also important because it protects the coin from further environmental damage and tampering while providing authentication and grade certification that buyers can trust, which dramatically increases the coin's marketability and the prices that sellers can command. When you hold one of these graded coins in its sealed plastic holder with the certification label clearly visible, you're holding a piece that has been verified by experts, protected from damage, and documented in a way that gives buyers confidence, and this combination of factors is what allows these coins to sell for millions at major auctions. Now, I want to address something important. While we're talking about coins worth $60 million, the reality is that most 1954 wheat pennies are worth somewhere between 10 cents and a few dollars, depending on condition, because they're common date coins that were produced in large quantities and don't have the dramatic errors we've been discussing. This doesn't mean you should ignore them, because any wheat penny in exceptional condition has value to collectors, and even common-date wheat pennies in MS66 red or better can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars to collectors who are building registry sets or who simply want the finest examples available. But it does mean that you need to carefully examine your coins, do your research, and ideally consult with experts before getting too excited about a coin that might turn out to be common. That being said, the potential is real. There are valuable 1954 varieties out there. They're not all accounted for, and someone, somewhere is going to find the next one, and I want that person to be you or someone in our community who's taking the time to learn about these incredible treasures. The best way to increase your chances of finding a valuable coin is to actively look through wheat pennies whenever you have the opportunity. Many banks still have customers who turn in rolled pennies that include wheat pennies. Coin shops often sell unsearched wheat penny rolls or bags, and estate sales, garage sales, and online marketplaces can be sources for old coin collections that might contain treasures. When you're searching through wheat pennies, develop a systematic approach. First sort by date and mint mark, setting aside any 1954 pennies for closer examination. Then look at each 1954 under magnification to check for doubling in the lettering and date, repunching in the mint mark, and any other unusual characteristics. It's also worth investing in a good reference book or subscribing to online databases that show images and descriptions of known varieties so you can compare your finds to documented examples. The time you invest in learning and searching could pay off in ways you can't even imagine, and even if you never find a $60 million coin, you'll likely discover pieces worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and you'll gain knowledge and experience that will serve you well in the hobby. There's something almost magical about the idea that a coin worth tens of millions of dollars could be sitting in an old jar in someone's basement, in a drawer full of forgotten change, or even in circulation being spent and received without anyone noticing its value. and this possibility is what drives people to check their pennies, to search through old collections, and to dream about the life-changing discovery that could happen at any moment. The 1954 wheat penny worth $60 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in wheat penny collecting, a combination of circumstances so perfect and rare that it created something truly extraordinary, and whether you ever find one or not, knowing about these coins changes how you think about money, value, and the hidden treasures that surround us every day. So the next time you receive pennies in change, before you toss them in a jar or leave them on the counter, take a moment to actually look at them, check the dates, check the mint marks, and if you see a 1954 examine it carefully, because you could be holding something that will change your life forever, and even if it turns out to be a common example, you'll have taken a step toward becoming a more knowledgeable collector and increasing your chances of making that discovery that every coin enthusiast dreams about. The story of the 1954 wheat penny worth $60 million is more than just a tale of money. It's a reminder that value can hide in the most unexpected places, that knowledge and attention to detail can unlock incredible opportunities, and that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are the ones we almost overlooked. And I hope that sharing this information with you today will inspire you to look more closely at the world around you, to appreciate the history and stories contained in everyday objects, and maybe, just maybe, to find that coin that will make all your dreams come true.